We are going to, in a minute, break for lunch, and we're due back at 2:15. Just a couple of things to say before then. We've got some student interns that are working with Gihan, myself, and Taro, both in the room and online, and we'd really love you to engage with them for just a little while during the lunch break that we have. What the project is looking at is, of course, using Lean to improve the way that students learn and write proof, but also how we can create resources and activities that smooth that transition, smooth the introduction to Lean and the challenges associated with that, but also is there a role for generative AI within there as well? So they've created all sorts of different resources that they'd love to talk to you about. In our room, we've got, if you can just wave, Hollie and Mark and Alvaro, and I will encourage them to find different stations in a moment so that you can have independent conversations with them. And online, maybe you can wave a hand or put a hand up or something. We've got Harvey and we've got Megan, who would also like to chat to those online. So we will break now. It will take us a few minutes for those in the room for us to set up lunch, etc. Please do have those conversations with our student interns. Please do give them some feedback on how they might improve the various resources and things that they're doing, and we will all come back together at 2:15. Thank you very much.
I guess we have Harvey to share his screen.
Well, I think it will. They'll have the discussion online there. We'll have discussions in the room. I think that's the easiest way of doing it. Okay. Lovely. Okay. See you all at 2:15.
All right. Is everyone who's online here? Can you all hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah. All right, cool. So I just wanted to take 15 minutes of your time just to explain what me and my team have been working on with Gihan and Barry. So I'm just going to share my screen with you so you can see what I've presented this morning. So just bear with me 1 second. Okay, can everyone see my presentation? Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm seeing thumbs up, all good. All right, so what we've been building on this past month is a custom GPT to help students with understanding of formal mathematical proof. So in case if you're unaware, ChatGPT has this feature which allows you to build a tailored, almost customized version of its technology so that it can be fitted for a specific purpose. And that's exactly what we've done here with Lean. So essentially what this is that it helps undergraduates understand formal mathematical proof by speaking to an AI bot, and what it will essentially do is it'll break down the proof for them and it will explain what's happening line by line. It'll give an explanation of the question, what kind of question is it, what needs to be essentially proven, what the corresponding logical definition is, and then it finishes off with definitions for each tactic that has been used in the Lean code. So just a general overview before we get into specifics. So you would ask the bot the statement that you'd like it to prove, and what it would then ask first of all before doing anything is whether you'd like it as a natural language proof or a Lean proof. We've chosen to do this because it's easier to, let's say we wanted to build an exercise that wants students to translate Lean over to natural language or vice versa. This would really help them to do that. And so then a proof would then be given using the requested format. So in this screenshot here, I've asked it to prove it in Lean 4, so that's what it's done. So I'm not sure if you can see my mouse, but I'm just going to sort of circle it around the statement which I've asked it to prove, which is this one here. And what it's essentially done is that it's given me a proof of it, and it's also added comments for each line so that the student can understand what's happening here. And then an explanation of each tactic will then be given. So, for example, it's using the intro tactic, the apply tactic, and the exact tactic. And these are all given definitions and examples as well. So I just want to first of all focus on natural language. So let's suppose you ask it to prove a statement in natural language. What it will do is it will essentially break it down into steps, and it'll explain to you what you need to do and what you can sort of like, what you can generally do to make the question easier for yourself, how to break it down and approach it from an easier angle. So it will split the proof down into different steps, and then what it will do is it'll then give a conclusion which reflects on what it's just done, and then it'll basically just show that they've proved it. And what I'll also do as well is it'll ask for further clarification if you're still stuck on, or you still don't understand what's happening. So now let's suppose you wanted to prove in Lean 4. So in this case, it will give the proof in chunks. So it'll sort of do like it'll take out a couple of lines, and then it'll say, right, do you want to proceed with the next line? Do you understand what's happening right now? Do you want to continue? And the reason why we've done this is that we don't want to give answers straight away to students. We don't feel like that's an effective way for them to learn. What would be better was if we sort of just nudge them in the right direction and see if they can carry on by themselves. But if they can't, then eventually it would give a full proof, and it would give definitions for each tactic that's being used as well, and it would try and explain it as clearly as it can. But additionally as well, if you still don't understand, it would try and explain it in much detail as it can. And furthermore, it also gives a corresponding chapter and a page to a book by Kevin Houston called How to Think Like a Mathematician, which was a very popular book for us undergraduates in our first year. And so yeah, so we've got some examples here of proofs that you can test, and then you can also access the proof guide as well by clicking on this button. I'll put a link to the GPT in the chat as well, so you can give it a go yourself. But yeah, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand it over to Megan, who's just going to show you a quick demonstration of how the GPT works. So Megan, you're free to take it over from here.
Yeah, of course. So I'm just going to share my screen. I hope everyone can hear me, if that's okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Share my screen. So can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to demonstrate an example of a proof. So here we have the proof for any integers a and b. If a and b are even, then a plus b is even. So I will just ask the GPT to prove that. And I'm going to ask for it in Lean 4 to begin with, but you can obviously ask it for natural language. So here we have the theorem of the proof, and it asks us if we'd like to proceed to the next line. So I'm going to say yes. It splits the proofs up into sections, so I feel like it makes it easier for the student. If they are trying to answer in the natural number game or in the modern maths game, they can add in line by line, and then they don't have to look at the GPT and ask it for look for the further lines. They can also try and work it out themselves. If not, then the GPT will provide another line. So yes, I would like to proceed with the next line. And yes, it will do this step by step. So the student has a chance to look at the line, put it into the natural number game, and then see if they can go from there by themselves. And yes. So now it's just going to provide the complete proof in Lean 4. And it asks if we'd like an explanation. I'm going to say yes. And here it will give what Harvey said in the PowerPoint. So it gives the statements of the proof and explains those step by step. and also gives a description of some tactics. So here is the tactics used and the definitions, and it also tells you the chapter of the Kevin Houston book, which is Basic Properties of Integers, found in chapter 2. This is really good because we really liked this book in our first year and we found it really helpful. So that's why we put it in. So maybe students can then go and use a further resource. So I'll use another example of another proof. So I'm going to say if n is even, then n squared is also even. Or I think I might have actually just done that one, but I'll give it a implication. Sorry. I'll give it the implication that Harvey stated in the PowerPoint, and we can ask it to prove this implication here. And yes, obviously there's a variety of proofs you can ask it, but it tends to follow the same pattern, and you can also ask it for it in natural language as well, and then it helps with students when they're trying to learn proofs to write in their exams rather than just using Lean. And yes. So it breaks down the proof step by step. And definitions of tactics used. And then finally, the Kevin Houston chapter book. I put a couple of examples in the PowerPoint, so you're more likely to try those examples, or you can test it out yourself during the lunch break if you'd like to see if it would prove your own proofs and how it would go about that. You can also test natural language, which is really good for, like I said, students if they're trying to learn to a proof to write in their exam, or they're trying to convert a Lean proof to a natural language proof for their homework, for example. But yeah, you're more than welcome to try your own proofs. Harvey will put the GPT in the chat so everyone can have a go themselves. But thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, please just let us know or put them in the chat for later.
So I have a comment and a question. So the comment is, so actually what you were getting was Lean 3 syntax. So it's giving you Lean 3 proofs with the begin, end, and the commas between the lines. And there's a way to prompt if you actually tell the model explicitly, be mindful of the difference between Lean 3 and Lean 4. It can do better. But the question is, can you say a little bit more about how this is implemented, what the mechanism is?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. So we started off by, we had two different proofs, two different GPTs. Mine was essentially like a kind of guide to answering proofs. It kind of narrowed it down, so it trimmed down the edges of a normal chat GPT to make it a bit more narrow. And then Harvey's was more based on the structure of the answer. So we merged our two GPTs together, and then we created this proof guide. And from then on, we've just been kind of adding to it. So for example, the Kevin Houston chapter, the Harvey also made a tactics Excel spreadsheet, which gives it tactics and definitions, which it can then give to students when it's explaining the proof. And from then on, we've just been kind of shipping it down. We are working on the Lean 4 syntax at the minute. It seems to be very inconsistent with how it answers the proofs, but we're going to be working on that in the last couple of weeks of our internship to see if we can fix it. I don't know if you want to say anything else, Harvey.
Yeah, really just reiterating what you just said. And I think for Lean, I think what we've noticed from developing this custom GPT is you have to be really oddly strict with ChatGPT to try and get it to be really consistent with things. And for Lean syntax is definitely something that we've picked up on over this past couple of weeks that we've been trying to, we've been trying to correct. And yeah, but I think like implementation wise for how we're going to, because I think what we've built is a tool with lots of potential for helping future undergrad students. It's really just a case of how do we now implement it so that it's not necessarily like a Google for Lean, but more like just a tool which can be almost like a tutor on your laptop.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's great. I really like it.
Thank you.
Can I also ask a question? Thank you very much, both Megan and Harvey and Alvaro, who worked on this project. I wanted to ask a little bit about what you said earlier, Megan, that you had two different GPTs that you merged them. So what in your kind of discussions, can you share a little bit about how you both kind of prioritize different aspects?
Yeah, so mine focused, like I said, mainly on kind of just the like notation that was used and the like terminology. Harvey's focused very strictly on kind of the layout of a proof. So the way it gave kind of a definition of the proof, the lean for proof, and then the definitions of the tactic. So what I did was we took the kind of knowledge base of Harvey's GPT, put it into mine, and then from then on, we've just been kind of like tweaking it a little bit so that it listens to both of the GPT's kind of like knowledge bases and instructions so that it would kind of combine both of those GPT kind of like things, and they would like combine them together and create one GPT. And then from then on, like I said, we've just been chipping it down. We've been adding to Harvey's tactics Excel spreadsheet, which is in the knowledge base, which just says like different tactics that it can use, definitions, and that's what it gives at the end of the proof. And then we've added things in like the Kevin Houston book, just to kind of like create it so that, like Harvey said, it's not a Google, but it's more of just like a guide to help them answer their proofs. That's why we thought it was really great to do it step by step, so that if you wanted to ask it a proof to answer in the natural number game or the modern maths game, then you can put a line in and then you can think, can I do the rest of this myself, or shall I ask the GPT? Because for me personally, when I found in my first year, it was very hard. I would try and use ChatGPT to help me answer the lean proofs, but it would give me something completely different. And with my like limited background knowledge, especially at the beginning of the year, it was hard to really understand what it was asking me. So that's why we kind of broke it down into very simple steps for students, especially when they start off in their first year.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for this, Megan. And in terms of the implementation, I think, Harvey, you spoke a little bit about it, and Megan, you said as well. So it will be like a tutor. It will be used like a tutor. So will this be kind of used by first years in Exeter next year? Is that the aim?
Yeah, we hope that first years will use it and think highly of it, because we would definitely love something like this in our first year if it was available to us. But of course, second and third years, if they ever feel like they have a need for lean, or they just want to try it out, maybe because some people in our second year might have been like, oh, I really liked lean in first year, maybe I'll give this a try, and they might carry it on. Like for me personally, I think I would still use lean to help answer my proofs in second year, but that's because I really enjoyed it. Not a lot of students feel that way, but I'm hoping that we can implement this in a way that first years will really find a good use for it, and that they will enjoy using it.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much both for this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your talk. So you said a little bit about knowledge base. So are the proofs, are they in like a knowledge, some sort of static knowledge base, or are those being generated by the GPT on the fly?
So with the knowledge base, my sort of idea of it would be that we want to show students just starting a maths degree how to write formal proof. But the main issue I first of all found was that ChatGPT liked to use tactics which were more advanced and were used for the sake of cutting corners and writing more efficient proofs. But the problem was is that like students don't encounter those kind of tactics until much later on. So we try to almost like restrict it to just use for basic tactics for ones the students will be most familiar with. And that's where the knowledge base really came into play. So for example, the custom GPT has a feature which allows it to use online web browsing and to use essentially search engines to get the answers it needs to put it to the user. We disabled that. And so instead what we've done is that we've put a spreadsheet in which contains all the tactics you'll need to use. And what we've essentially asked it to do is construct your proofs with only these tactics. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of tactics in that spreadsheet, but they're tactics that first year undergrads will be familiar with, or at least will have seen before.
So it's not the case that the proofs are really being generated by the GPT. So because my experience with that so far is that there's also like a lot of inconsistency and incorrectness. And while it was Lean 3, it looked fairly compilable? Like, is that your experience as well? That it will generally give something that compiles at least, or is that not? Is that too optimistic?
I think what we've got right now is at least sort of we can work with it. I think that because I think a major limitation we've seen of ChatGPT is that it can make mistakes, whether they're small mistakes or big mistakes. But I think in terms of giving the student a direction as to where to go down and how they should approach a question, we feel like what we've built here will be very helpful in that sense. But we really want to throw off the idea that this is just a cheat, a Google, whatever you want to call it. But we essentially just want to we want to sell it as almost like just a tool that can help. And so whether the Lean code will be compilable is, I mean, it's something that's definitely, I think actually it's something that's definitely worth asking almost to the student, whether this is something that if they wrote this in their exam, would it be something that the examiner would go, well, this is perfectly correct. It's perfectly reasonable to have this proof. But I think that this would actually be a good exercise for the student to have, for sort of like, this is what they've given to me. Is it based on my experience of learning this kind of stuff in lectures, is this reasonable?
I see. Thanks.
No worries.
As a follow-up question, because I think when students get their code and it wouldn't compile at some stage, it might cause frustration unless you do some expectation management. So is this something that you're already providing, that you're saying, look, this code can be wrong, or this is just a draft, this is something you can build on, or is this not in the text that the GPT gives you?
Right now, I'd say it's not something we're specifically focusing on. Right now, we've been focusing on just trying to develop a consistency, trying to make sure that what it's outputting to the student is, well, the lean syntax, for example, being a major factor of that. We want it to be as consistent as possible, and that's where our main focus is. But we would, at some point, and this was something that we actually had the idea of very early on in the stage, is that we would like to almost say to students, well, what we've built for you is absolutely amazing. It's great, it's going to help you, but just read through it, check the understanding everything, and it actually might not be correct because chances are the student might have used ChatGPT before, it might have given them answers that might not have been correct, and so we can say to them, well, go through what it's telling you, and is it actually correct? And okay, it might be correct, but is there maybe a better way you could go around the proof? Is there a more concise way to it?
Okay, thanks. And do you see it's performing better on some proofs than on others? Like the natural number can maybe vary well, but then it's like, how far can you deviate?
I think in especially the logic side of things, it's performing. I think it's performing strongest in there, and I think the reason why is because we've built so much around that, because we've had so much experience in the logic side of things in first year. But what we want to try and do is maybe look at more number theory side of things, like groups and just general number theory, really, and try and push it towards that direction as well. We want to try and essentially take the whole year, the whole first year of mathematics, and try and incorporate that into the GPT. And right now, we're mainly focusing on logic, predicate logic, stuff like that, because essentially what you learn after that can correspond back to what you learned. And it's why I think logic is such an important chapter. It's such an important element in mathematics.
Thanks a lot. It really looks very nice. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions from anyone?
It may be a logistic question. I'm trying to access the link, but I think because I don't have a paid account, I cannot access this. Is this as it should be in some sense, or am I doing something wrong?
I think that you can. I think everyone can access it, but I feel like it's time restricted. So you'll only be able to use it for some amount of time. That's just the major limitation with this tool.
Okay.
But what I'll do is I'll just quickly test this link, make sure it works, and if something
Of course.
wrong's happening, then I'll just put a new one in. But yeah.
And students, would they need to have a subscription to ChatGPT or not to use it?
It really depends upon how much the faculty want to use this tool. I feel like this tool would be useful in a more subtle way, almost like just use it from time to time. And if we just stick to that usage of it being used from time to time, but actually a subscription to it won't really be necessary. And in actual fact, it could actually encourage the students to take what they've learned from GPT and now apply it to tutorial sheets and whatever questions that they've been set by their tutors.
Okay, thanks.
And like I said before, I'll just reiterate what Harvey said, in the sense that it's not going to be used as an answer sheet. It's mainly going to be used as a tutor when they're stuck. So we think not encouraging them to use it all the time and encouraging them to use it when they need to is important, and not just using it as an answer sheet, but more or less in a way to help them when they're stuck. Like, you don't necessarily have to put the proof in and ask it to prove it. You can copy and paste what, say, the natural number game is give you, ask it to fill in stories, or you can just ask it for help. It won't give you the full-on proof if you just ask it for help. It will just guide you in the right direction. And that's what we're going to encourage them to do, not just put a proof in and then just copy the whole thing over.
And do you think that knowledge in here transfers to other GPTs? I don't know how it at the moment works, but
no, we kind of like narrowed it down so that we kind of turned off like web page browsing, and so that it will only use what we've given it in its knowledge base. So it, hopefully when we work on it a little bit more, it should be more consistent, like you said, with the syntax errors and with kind of the way it gives proof. Like Harvey said, it's very strong on its logic side, and then we're just going to kind of incorporate the other sides of mathematics in and kind of play around with it a little bit so it's more consistent. And we're also working with Nigel, who is our new lecturer for next year, who may teach things in a slightly different way, but we're going to work with him to make sure that we can make him consistent with what he's going to be teaching compared to what we were taught last year.
But I'm also interested in the other way around. So I can imagine that students are going to use this, then they're going to like it, going to use it a lot, and then maybe give some interaction even with a GPT, and the GPT learns better and better how to solve certain exercises. Now I'm just wondering, I don't know, maybe you know, whether the knowledge built up in this system can also be accessed from outside the system, because it's all powered by OpenAI or Microsoft. I'm not sure if you know about that.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Harvey knows. Do you, Harvey?
Sorry, Jim, could you just repeat that?
Yeah, so I'm interested in whether there's flow of information on how to do these proofs from within your custom GPT to other GPTs, to general ChatGPT, I mean, maybe also to Microsoft Copilot and things like that. Because then you can and I really like this idea of having it a tutor. It doesn't give you the answers, but maybe still there is some knowledge built up at some point. It kind of knows how to do these proofs, and then maybe also you can just add ChatGPT, and it will also do it for you without these restrictions. I don't know how feasible this scenario is.
I think it's definitely feasible, and I think for transferring what we've built here to other platforms like Microsoft Copilot is definitely within the realms of possibility. And but I think for knowledge base, as well as containing an Excel spreadsheet, the knowledge base also contained flowcharts and some images as well. For example, with getting the structure right, I know this sounds mad, but literally what I did on my iPad was just sketch what I wanted the structure to look like. And I labeled each part of it. I gave it to the GPT and it actually recognized it. And the structure was really consistent after that. Now, it really depends if technology such as Microsoft Copilot also has these same features to analyze .jpeg files and other files you might want to put in its knowledge base. It really heavily depends on that. So yeah, but I think that Yeah, our GPT the knowledge base we build in our GPT really depends on whether the GPT can recognize the files that are inside there, because otherwise the thing just won't it won't work, to put it bluntly. And I think that if we wanted to transfer it over to other AI tools that may arise in the future or ones that are with us now, such as Copilot, I think that that's something that they will have to have. So yeah, I think that looking ahead in the future, that what we build may be solely restricted to ChatGPT, but in other cases we might be able to expand it out to other AI tools as well. But I think in a more general sense, just being able to give mathematical proofs for using only specific tactics and trying to make it as clear as possible to the student is something that I think that I'm confident that all AI platforms will be able to do in some capacity. Yeah, that's right. But yeah, unless there are any other questions, then I'm happy to sign off. But yeah, just thank you very much for your attention, and looking forward to the rest of the day.
Yeah, and thank you for
Thank
all
you
your
too.
questions and your help as well. Thank you.
Thank you.